What is up everyone, ßoschee here, back with another video, and this week I wanted to show some WoW gameplay of a 5-mask horrific vision of Stormwind. But before we get into the actual gameplay, I did want to go over my gear, talents, and items I used as I thought it could be helpful. So for my gear, I have my 3 Azerite pieces, which all have 3 Spiteful Apparitions and 3 Cores of Insanity. Now I know the ideal setup is to have 3 Chorus, 2 Spiteful, and 1 Whisper, but honestly these are the 3 best Azerite pieces I have, and honestly I couldn't really ask for better Azerite traits at the moment, so that's what I went ahead with. For trinkets, I have a Raid Finder Manifesto of Madness, and I also have a Inscription Crafted 400 item level trinket, which is honestly pretty good for a Shadow Priest, so if you do need like a budget trinket, I definitely recommend this one. For my neck, I have a level 87, and then I have my major as a Essence of the Focusing Iris, and my 3 minors are all rank 3, and those are Breath of the Dying, Blood of the Enemy, and Purification Protocol. Now my cloak is fully upgraded at rank 15, and it does have 6 extra corruption resistance due to the Malefic Cores that you can earn after you've hit rank 15 on your cloak. Due to me having 56 corruption, this actually will put my corruption at a total of 14, and that actually puts me under the cap of the Eye of Corruption, which is kind of nice, but because my corruption is so low, you can probably tell that my corruption gear is actually not that amazing. So for my bracers, I have a Void Ritual, and then for my gloves and belt, I have the increased haste you gain from all sources by 6%. My pants are a proc to, gain increased haste for 4 seconds, and then my boots are a increased amount of crit strike you gain from all sources by 6%. So not, anything too crazy or amazing on my gear. And then my weapons are a 450 Mythic 7 item level, and then a 440 offhand. So overall, my gear isn't too amazing. I am a 453. I do have 458. I do have like higher item level gear, but it isn't exactly the stats I'm looking for. So there is that issue, but I did run this mask at this run at 453. So I just wanted to show that you can run it at a lower item level, and from typically what I've seen on other videos, everyone's pretty much into the 460s or even 470. And so I just wanted to kind of show that you can get this done at a lower item level as long as you are, using proper items and whatnot. So we'll go ahead and jump into the items real quick. So for the items, I ended up using the Flask of Endless Fathoms. Now, silly me, I did not know there was a better flask called the Greater Flask of Endless Fathoms, so obviously use the Greater Flask. I also used Potion of the Unbridled Fury. This I used on pretty much all the bosses or mini bosses, as it is a pretty much just an increased DPS potion, and I mean, you don't need to use it on every fight, but it doesn't really hurt, especially if you can spare the potions. I used a War Scroll of Intellect, as I am an inscription profession, and so I decided just to use this as, any extra intellect isn't bad. Then I used Drums of the Mountain. Now, personally, I only use this on the last boss, but I have seen people use it throughout, and you can really pretty much just wait out the 10-minute timer at the end, as you probably should have enough sanity, or you could have an extra orb that you can use so to gain that sanity back. Lastly, the food I used was the baked Voidfin. Now I use this because I honestly find myself jumping around and moving a lot, and so the increased movement speed was very helpful to me, especially in Stormwind, in the Mage Tower area. But I have seen people suggest using Dubious Delight, which is a reduce in crowd control by 20%, and also the Ghastly Goulash, which is a 2% regen of max health per second or something like that. So if you are having issues with like crowd control, or if you feel like you're taking a lot of damage, then I'd definitely recommend using that. But overall, I think the foods that were meant for visions are all about playstyle, and so my playstyle was constantly moving, and I felt the 20% movement speed was just nice on top of the other traits that you get through Mother's Research. As for my actual talents, I have pretty much the standard talent tree for Shadow. The only thing is maybe Last Word. I typically do run Last Word, but I felt that Psychic Core was actually needed, as there are a couple of casters in the vision that you do want to interrupt. And I believe in Old Town, there are like 2 casters in some groups, and so you definitely cannot interrupt both of them. Even if you do focus them down, sometimes they do get a cast off that will like stun you or something. So I definitely found a second interrupt type of spell was much needed. This is also helpful in the Mage Tower area, as the Void spawns put a Void debuff on you that increases damage, and so you pretty much want to interrupt that as much as possible while focusing them down. So I would recommend taking Psychic Core if you decide to do it. Now for the Mother's Research, I think during the time I ran this, I was pretty much maxed out. I think the only things left was a 3rd point in Expansive Mind, which would have gave me a little bit more sanity, and then the last point would have went into Synchronized Mind Stabilizer, which is the free res for an ally, but that was obviously not needed as it was a solo run. So yeah, that is the quick overview of my stuff. Let's go ahead and jump into the gameplay. I'm gonna pretty much let that run, and then I will probably chime in when I think something needs to be said. But there will also be timestamps in the description below, so if you want to kind of jump to a certain part of the run, then you can go ahead and do that. So alright, talk to you guys soon.
Now fallen to the void, a staging ground for N'Zoth's armies. Obeying the whispers in her mind, Alleria Windrunner forces all to submit to the old god, or be purged.
Alright, so right here we're just going to make sure that we have our food buff from the Voidfin for that extra movement speed. And then we're going to make sure that we have our Fortitude and our Intellect Scroll. And then we're going to go ahead and run around the room and make sure that we have all of the 5 masks activated. Now if you don't know, the masks will add unique effects to the run, alongside making each enemy 25% stronger. And so this stacks up all the way up to 125%, as you can see right there. And then we're going to go ahead and start the run. Now here at the very start, I'm just going to pull these 3 mobs. I don't really do too big of pulls here. Right here I use my Iris just because I want to get the 3 stacks of the Vision Hunter real quick to get the increased speed and haste. Honestly, I could have probably pulled both packs together, but I didn't think too big on it at the time. And then I'll go ahead and pull the 2 guards that guard the final boss, even though we're not going there right now. They're just kind of more or less annoying later on, so might as well pull them. Now as a priest, you can dispel that Shadow Shift shield, so make sure that you do that. Go ahead and take these out, and then we'll probably head into our first area, which will be, I think, the Trade District. Alright, so now we're going to head over into the trade district. Now, for me, I always prioritize the burrowing appendages just because more or less they're annoying. Also, notice that I have Scorched Feet as one of the madnesses in this area. Now, I honestly like Scorched Feet just because it allows for you to hop over the void puddles that you actually create due to one of the masks. But it also will allow you to, gain distance while you're casting and just kind of move around more. I like mobility, so I definitely think this is a nice madness to have. It does kind of sometimes suck when you jump in the wrong direction, but just, keep an eye on it. Make sure that you know when you're about to jump due to the debuff icon on the right side. But yeah, I definitely think you can use it to your advantage when you're trying to kite things and whatnot.
Target.
Alright, so the first mini-boss in here is Inquisitor Darkspeak, and so this guy will cast Agonizing Torment, will actually drain sanity from you. Now, you can interrupt, but he does end up casting again unless you burst him down quick enough, so honestly, you can take a couple of hits just because you do get the 200 sanity back from your Titan's Research talent, so honestly, it's not that big of a deal. You can interrupt the first cast, but not do the second one, and you'll be just fine. Then this is the final disciple in the area, the Slave Master. And so he, honestly, just dot him up and kite away. This is where I think Scorched Feet actually kind of helps because you can gain distance once he starts casting chains. So as you can see, like right here, he'll start casting chains, and while you're chains, you'll get that Scorched debuff, and it'll allow you to jump. Now, he does try to pull you back into the fire, but overall, just makes kiting him a little bit easier with that madness in this zone. And that's about it for that guy. Pretty easy. Full sanity by the end of that, so no big issue. Go ahead and rescue the captives, so then you can move on to the next zone. Alright, so when transitioning over to the Mage Tower area, you'll run into this tendril, which you do have to kill. Now, the tumors on the ground you do not have to kill, but I typically will go ahead and dot them up and deal damage, as they do count toward a executioner or a visioned executioner stack. So honestly, it doesn't hurt to just dot them up, kill them really quick, just to get that extra movement speed and haste.
I don't have a target. Too far away.
Okay, so right here you'll see the Greater Void Elemental and the Portal Master. Now, you definitely want to target the Void Elemental, as it will actually cast a Void buff, or Void debuff I should say, onto you that increases damage done to you in this area. And so you definitely want to interrupt any time that he casts,
That item is still
and that's
recharging.
why I think Psychic Core is actually really good. This is actually where the Voidfin comes in handy, the extra movement speed. So as you can see, we have leaden foot in this area, and so you pretty much have to stop for a little bit, cast, and then move again. And so that 20% extra movement speed allows you to move quickly, not to get hit by those void puddles,
Don't have a target.
which will decrease your sanity each time you're hit.
I need mana.
So that Voidfin food actually really shines right here when these specific madnesses are in this area. Alright, so right here you can see another Greater Void Elemental. Now that Void, a casting ability, increases the shadow damage that you take, and so you can see I already have one stack on me, and you can see my health kind of dipping because both of those casters, other than the Void Elemental, are casting shadow damage, and so that's what it increases. So another big reason to, you know, avoid having that cast go off. Now, actually, before I pull this Portal Keeper, I'm actually going to take that food that increases my insanity by 100, just because I only have 2 more Void Portals to close, and the extra 100 sanity is going to be helpful, as I won't get too low where my mask will kick in that will summon the extra minion if I'm below 50%. And so I just take the time to go ahead and eat it real quick and then move on.
I require a target.
The void will consume this city! Burn! His minions are legion! Burn in the Master's name!
Now before this boss, we're going to go ahead and hit one of our orbs so we can get our full sanity back. Now the reason you want to do this is because you actually are going to lose a decent amount of sanity unless you have the DPS to bring him down quickly. Now the cast that you want to interrupt is actually the polymorph and not the missiles. The missiles do cause a loss of sanity, but honestly it's not too much to worry about. The part about this that was annoying is that we had let into foot madness, and so luckily my DPS tricked him out of that frost orb channel, but you want to interrupt the polymorph just because it will trigger you to walk in place, which creates the void pools, and you'll constantly be standing in that. So that is the reason you want to interrupt that, but you usually can only interrupt one polymorph unless you have the DPS to kill him by the end of a second polymorph. But as you can see right here, what's going to happen is I'm going to get the second polymorph cast onto me, and then I'm also going to have the minion summoned by the mask because I'm below 50%. And so this is where you lose a lot of sanity because you create pools, you're standing in it, let in foot keeps you in the, and so I kind of had to just eat some of the void pools as I stood there waiting for the let in foot to go off of, but ended up killing him. So now we can move on to the next zone. So right here you'll take the portal and then we'll head over to the Dwarven District. And right after we take the portal, we're going to go ahead and take a quick bite of the sanity food to get a little bit of sanity back, as we lost a little bit more than we really wanted to after, you know, using up a full orb. But that's just the way that boss goes if you don't have the gear to just down it really quickly. So
I don't have a target. I need to target something first.
You don't have to do this. Resist! Fight back! Can't believe it. Everyone's gone insane. They're stockpiling weapons for N'Zoth's armies in the Dwarven District. We have to destroy them.
alright, so now we're in the Dwarven District. Now these pools are a little bit better just because they don't have a lot of high damage things, so I pulled a decent amount and I'm just going to use my iris to clear it pretty much and then just move on with it. If you're comfortable enough, you can pull. This is probably the best place as it is a lower area, so it's not as hard hitting as like things like the Mage Tower or the Old Town area. But yeah, go ahead and, you know, interrupt the fallen Taskmaster if you see him casting. But honestly, he pretty much just buffs another trash mob next to him, but it's not too big of a deal. But yeah, just go ahead and kite, use Scorched Feet to your advantage if you can, and just go ahead and get all the bombs planted. I chose to go ahead and pull the mini boss already right here, just because I was at half sanity already, and so you pretty much just want to avoid being at half sanity because you get adds like this throughout as long as you're sitting that low. And honestly, this boss is a very easy boss fight, especially with Scorched Feet, because you can easily kite him as he jumps towards you. So
target something first. I'm out of range.
That's all of them. Detonate the explosives and let's get out of here.
Alright, so we're at the final boss for this area, and so pretty much just make sure that you're keeping an eye on your Scorched Feet debuff, just to make sure that you're pointing in the correct direction when you are hopping, because the last thing you want to do is to hop into the bombs. And then just make sure that you're off to the side of his empowered Forged Breath, and then, you know, pretty much just stay out of fire, you know, generic rules of WoW, so yeah, pretty easy.
Go on ahead. I'll destroy the forge to ensure it never makes another weapon for N'Zoth.
Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and head into Old Town, and before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and eat some sanity food, just to, you know, pretty much almost top me off before I walk in here. Now, Old Town is probably the most, or my most hated area, just because of all the stealth units, so just make sure you take this area kind of slow, because honestly, this is a place that you could easily die just due to the amount of mobs that you can pull at once. So there's typically 2 stealth units in this hallway right when you enter. Now to the right there is an elite, but because I just ate that food, I'm gonna go ahead and not kill her right away and go ahead to pull this trash mob, or this set of mobs, and then we'll end up heading back to that elite when we're a little bit lower on sanity, just to make the best use out of gaining that 200 sanity for killing elites talent. So yeah. Now right here I'm going to go ahead and cast Mind Seer. Now that usually will get these 2 stealth units out, and that's what you'll typically want to do, is cast Mind Seer for a little bit on these packs, just to make sure if there are any stealth units around. Now right here you can see me go into this bar and start clearing out this pack. Now if you're doing a 5 mask run, you really don't have to do this. I was kind of in a farming mode where I was doing this for the corrupted mementos, and in here you can possibly get another chest, and there is a odd crystal possibly up top in this bar, and so I'm so used to clearing this place, but on a 5 mask run, honestly this is just a waste of time. So yeah, don't mind me, I'm just on farming mode. Now after this trash pack, we're going to go ahead and jump back to that elite at the beginning of the zone, just because I noticed I was about 50%, obviously because that one mob spawned. So we're going to go ahead and kill our Master Terrington. Just make sure if they're in melee range, she'll start to cast a circle, which just hit me just there, the Blade Flourish. Make sure you're outside of it when she casts that, and then Roaring Blast, just make sure you're to the side. She pretty much just alternates between the 2, so just kite her until she starts to blade flourish, run, and then obviously just rinse and repeat. And once again, the Voidfin is, proving its worth with the movement speed buff, just because there is a lot of things to avoid in the Vision of Stormwind, and so that's why, once again, I chose that food over the others. Alright, so the mini boss for this area is this guy. Now, I went ahead and pulled him right away. I didn't want to try to pull the right side mobs, but notice that he does put a debuff on you. Now, it is a disease, and so you can actually remove the disease from yourself, so you don't have to worry about that. But also, just watch out for the tendrils that he puts on the ground. If you're standing in it, I believe you lose sanity and you are silenced. And so just make sure you're doing that. Make sure you're taking the debuff off yourself, and pretty easy fight other than that.
Got the key. This thing is what drove Sean mad. Keys need to be used at the same time. You take one monolith, I'll take
Right here, we're going to go ahead and pop another sanity orb, just because this boss is pretty annoying, and honestly, you can lose a lot of sanity, just because sometimes the dark gaze from the eyeballs are kind of wacky, and sometimes you won't be facing them and they'll still drain sanity. So I always like to top myself off just in case it does happen like that. Now, I think on this fight particularly, I didn't lose too much sanity, but I have had fights where I just lost too much sanity due to not even looking in the direction of dark gaze, but somehow it was catching my character's front face, so it just decided to drain the sanity. Now, this is a little rough because he does disappear. He likes to be behind you, and you can't really cast because the Eyes of Chaos are right behind him. And so it's just it's a interesting time being a caster on this fight, but overall, it's not too bad as long as you are making sure to constantly keep your dots up.
I don't have a target.
It's done. But Stormwind is still lost and leaving the city. I suggest you do the same. Watch your back.
Now right here, I'm gonna go ahead and eat some food until I realize that my potion of the Unbridled Fury is actually on cooldown. So I'm honestly eating this for no reason, because I actually head back out into the main area, as I notice I have one stack of the Vision Executioner buff, so I figure I might as well go ahead and kill something or two of these mobs right here just to get bigger stacks, and then that way my potion will be off cooldown by that time. So yeah, I should have ate the food after I went and did this because pretty much just losing all the sanity I just gained back from the food. But yeah, that's just a mistake on my part. So I go ahead and kill them, and then I go ahead and run back in. My potion is off cooldown. So we're just going to go ahead and do this fight. So this fight is a little bit of annoying because she pretty much just borrows abilities from all the other bosses that you fought. So pretty much, you know, avoid everything on the ground, avoid the Eye of Chaos Dark Gaze, and then she also does the polymorph trick, which you will be able to interrupt like one, but as you see throughout the fight, I do get polymorphed a couple times, and honestly this is kind of messy for the most part, but it's also because I don't have the gear to kind of properly burst her down. And I'm also like kind of worried about that eye a lot of the time. It's just a hectic fight for me in general, and so I probably could have done this a lot cleaner, but I'll go ahead and let the fight play out, and yeah.
Require a target. I don't have a target.
So right here you can start to see that I'm getting a lot messier with how I'm executing things, but I'm kind of playing this way just because I know that I have the free revive up to 500 sanity, so I'm kind of playing a little bit gutsier, and I hit that 50% mark where another mob is spawned and then I'm polymorphed. So I'm kind of somewhat panicking right here where I'm kind of just running around trying to avoid stuff. Can't really see the boss, but I get to that point where, you know, I know that I can kill her just because I have that extra revive, and right here is where I get gutsy and I just stand out in the open because I know that I can take the sanity hit and still live, and then it's dead. So yeah, that is the run. Pretty messy ending, I must say, but overall I think the rest of the run was a pretty clean run, even though it took a decent amount of time. But that is a full clear on 5 mass by a 453 Shadow Priest, so definitely, you know, don't count yourself out if you have a low item level. But I hope you guys enjoyed, and, you know, let me know if you guys want me to do any other videos. I probably plan on doing the Ogre Vision next week when it's available. But yeah, go ahead and check out my socials, and I will see you guys in the next video. See ya.